All right, 1 minute. We have 1 minute. Who else is excited? I'm very excited. I'm playing my music, I'm having my time, I'm lighting a candle, I'm excited. Absolutely, always start the day with a bang. That should be a rule. Oh, everyone, the shirt is actually from the Shadowhunters crew. It was for season 2. They got one for us. That was very nice. Is somebody on the back? No, nothing's on the back. All right, it is noon. All right, it is now 12 o'clock. Thank you everyone for commenting on the shirt. I really appreciate it. Welcome to the first Instagram Live for the first 100 pages or so of our first book. This is definitely a huge moment for me. This is a huge moment for everyone tuning in. This is an awesome moment for our book club, guys. We did it. We have our first of many Instagram Lives and book discussions. Hopefully we get to do this a lot. Hopefully we can stay on schedule. Hopefully, a lot of things that we're going to work towards together. And hopefully we continue to explore and expand our minds through the use and world of great literature. So, thank you for joining. I'm very excited to talk about this novel. As you guys know, Slaughterhouse-Five is one of my favorite books that I've read. Everything that I've read that he's written, I've always been so obsessed with. So just to confirm, so everyone knows, I know my brother is asking, as of today, we are going to discuss up to chapter 5 of the book. Not past chapter 5, up to chapter 5. So, the last line that you should have read was, the last paragraph is, if I hadn't spent so much time studying Earthlings, said the Tralfamadorian, I wouldn't have any idea what was meant by free will. I visited 31 inhabited planets in the universe, and I've studied reports on 100 more. Only on Earth is there any talk of free will. So, that's the last page you should have read. I know some of you are like me and you read ahead because, hell, it's a good book. But this is the farthest we're discussing to. I don't want to know anything past it. I don't want to know anything past Billy Pilgrim Says the Universe, blah, blah, blah. I don't want to know about it. We're only talking up to this page. I know for different people in different languages, it might be different, but essentially the end of chapter 4. We are only reading to the end of chapter 4. I was thinking actually Brooke Price 13. I was thinking of doing a day, maybe today at the end of this live, where we can start, I'll read the first few pages of the next chapter with you guys. I'll read it out loud. And we'll talk about it. So first and foremost, the first question I want to ask, what do you guys think of the book? What do you guys think? How is it? What do you think of the way it's written? What do you think of Billy Pilgrim? What do you think of Kurt Vonnegut? What do you think of the actual story itself? The bombing of Dresden, going through this man that's unstuck in time. What do you guys think? Let me know. Let's read some comments. So I'll read them out to you guys. My favorite superheroes are Captain America and Superman. Now, the book. This is a discussion about the book, guys. I love how it's written and how he explains things. I do too. I think Vonnegut does a very good job at that. You're reading The Great Gatsby. Congratulations. Will there be a Portuguese version? There is a Portuguese version of the book. I think I tweeted the link to it. Check my Twitter, my tweets. There's one that has the link for a PDF. I felt weird when I read this book. In a good way. Why weird? Guys, let's be descriptive. Remember, we have to figure out why we felt certain ways, and maybe the author wants us to feel certain ways. Maybe he's trying to elicit things from us. It's different from what I usually read, but it kind of has me hooked. Good. I'm glad I'm helping expand what you guys read. And that's what I'm doing as well with this book club. There are a few books in there that I normally wouldn't have picked up. It's amazing. Not very sure at first, but I loved it. It's really hard to read. It's not a simple book. No, it's not. It's not. The humor is so simple, yet so charged. I love it. Yes, Kurt Vonnegut is known for being such a very good, writing such good satire, and he's hilarious. Billy Pilgrim's one of those complex characters I've met in the book. Confusing. The history is so fun. Yes, what do I think of Tralfamador? We'll talk about that. That's a question I have. It's not my favorite book, but honestly I'm enjoying so much, and description and the writing is great. Good. Roland Weir. The book is brilliant. Thank you. Hard to understand, pretty confusing. Okay, I'm going to speak to that very quickly because I think there's a reason why it's kind of hard to understand, and there's a huge reason why it's confusing. There's a reason why this book is, I'm going to quote this one, in my copy, let's be at the end of chapter 1, at the end of chapter 1, right before Kurt Vonnegut goes to talk about the Lufthansa plane that he was supposed to get on with Bernard V. O'Hare, there's a paragraph that Kurt Vonnegut writes, and I think this will give you perspective into why the book is very difficult to read, or why the timeline is all messed up and it's all jumbled. So the friends of Seymour Lawrence call him Sam. So I say to Sam now, Sam, here's the book. It is so short and jumbled and jangled, Sam, because there is nothing intelligent to say about a massacre. Everybody is supposed to be dead, to never say anything or want anything ever again. Everything is supposed to be very quiet after the massacre, and it always is, except for the birds. And what do the birds say? All there is to say about a massacre. Things like, pooty wheat. So, the book was set up in this way. It jumps back and forth through time. The book was set up, and it makes no sense like this, because there's nothing intelligent to say about a war. And there's nothing intelligent to say about massacre. It's supposed, thank you, Maduri Mustache, that's funny, Maduri Mustache. Yes, war is supposed to confuse and baffle people. It's supposed to do that. There's nothing intelligent to say. Kurt Vonnegut, an extremely eloquent man, an elegant man himself, did not have the words and could not find the words to write about his famous book about Dresden. You know? It's one of those things. There's nothing to say. Even the birds don't have anything to say. What do they say? Pooty wheat. Means nothing. There's nothing logical or intelligent to say about a war. So it goes. So, that's one of the reasons why this book jumps back and forth. I think that's the main reason why he couldn't. But there are a lot of elements in the first chapter. The chapter that is the author speaking, or the narrator, not the author, but the narrator speaking to the reader. That first chapter with Vonnegut. You know, all this happened, more or less. The war parts, anyway, are pretty much true. That whole chapter is tying in the rest of the book. There are a lot of things in that chapter that he uses again. Repetition. Different colors that he'll bring up. Mustard gas and roses, blue and ivory, horses, anytime he brings up a clock or time. This is to say that this whole book, whilst being completely jumbled and jumbled, it's still connected. There still is a through line, and he's still telling a complete story. So, I think that's very cool. Let's see, what other questions do I have? Took some notes. Took myself some notes. But a lot of my notes are actually in the book. So, you're so right. War is not intelligent. Dialogue is so important, but in the war there is no dialogue. That's why this is an anti-war book, because it's intelligent, the complete opposite of what war is. Interesting. Wow, cool. I have some problems with language, but good. I'm glad time travel is the only way to escape reality. No, I don't think it's the only way to escape reality. I think that time travel is a way for him to understand reality from a different perspective. Remember, there's that quote that Vonnegut says. Wow, I just opened right to it. Really cool. There's that quote that Vonnegut says where he goes, the time would not pass. Somebody was playing with the clocks. And not only with the electric clocks, but with the wind-up kind, too. The second hand on my watch would twitch once, and a year would pass, and then it would twitch again. There was nothing I could do about it. As an earthling, I had to believe whatever clocks said, and calendars. So that's him kind of saying, like, we're tied. It's like a human condition. We're tied to this idea of time. We can only experience it. He says in the book, we can only experience it moment to moment. We can't fully, we don't see it like the Tralfamadorians do, where they see it all as a stretch of the Rocky Mountains. Everything has always existed, and they can take part in whatever part they want. Unfortunately, we're sad earthlings. We're pillars of salt, and we can only see them moment to moment. And that's, there's a lot, metaphor. It's so cool, so cool. You read the book in 3 hours. Oh my gosh, good for you. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I feel like Billy is just a witness to his life, jumping to different moments, but not really living the moments he travels to. Is that much different from the rest of humanity, though? How much of our present do we actually live in? Anytime you worry or stress, you're taking yourself out of the present and living in the future. And anytime you're dwelling on something, you feel bad about something, you're holding on to something, you're living in the past. So we're merely just witnesses to our present. We're not fully experiencing it. I think that's something that Kurt Vonnegut says in the book, and that's why I think the quote, "So it goes," is so important. Because of that, I think he's trying to say, like, all we have is this moment. I feel like I had to put this book down and think about my own life. I'm really glad this book makes me think like that. Great. That's one of the goals I have with books and good art. There's a really good quote about art in the book. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But I think you should read. Good books should make you think. And I honestly think the world would be a much different place if everyone's read this book. So, thank you guys for joining. It does make you think about everything. How can we live in the present if we panic about the future? We can't panic about the future. Remember, that's another thing, another quote. All moments, past, present, and future, have always existed and always will exist. So I think that's that. So it goes is supposed to unstick you from time. I think so it goes is a device he uses to be like, this happens. Bad things happen in life. Things happen. So it goes. But we get to enjoy this moment. That's all we have. We don't get to hold on to it. There's that famous quote after he takes the girls to the New York World's Fair, where he says, and I asked myself of the present how wide it was, how deep it was, how much of it was mine to keep. All you have is the present, I think. The minute you start worrying about the future or the past, you pull yourself out of it and you can't fully live in it. I think all you have is literally you can take as much of this as you want right now, and then you have to let go of it. It's very Buddhist in that sense, I think. Sorry, I've kind of fell back in questions. Let's keep looking. My favorite quote is, "Get off the road, you dumb mother," because it reminded me that all the characters are people, and not just metaphors. Cool. So it goes indeed. I really feel like Billy time traveling is a way for him to live with the aftermath the war left him. So it goes the cycle of life, yeah. See, this is a question I've had. Because I forgot who brought it up to me. But someone said about... I've read this book a few times. I've read this book quite a few times. There's something to be said about that. That's a good question. I'm going to think about that for a little bit, and I'll come back to it. Yes, this book can help you not to worry about the future. I don't know what that says. I think it's just a bunch of runes put together. Yes, that's one thing. If you've noticed, "So it goes" only comes after death in the book. He only says "so it goes" when it's relating to a death. He never says it another time. I think it's because humans dwell on death. And I think that's his way of being like, get over it. It happens. Like, there's so much more to life. But that's also how I'm reading it right now. Remember, all of these opinions of this book can change. And that's the best thing about good books, is you can read them a million times, and every time you read it, it's completely different. You don't understand how I could write in a book. I write in pencil, and I write very lightly. And also, I have like... this isn't my only copy of this book, so don't worry. I don't ruin my books. What is my take on Blue and Ivory? That's a really good question. I think he uses that repetition to circle back to the beginning, because he started saying Blue and Ivory in the first chapter, along with Mustard Gas and Roses. And I think that's a way of him tying the whole book together, being like, yes, the narrator that spoke to you in the first chapter is no longer gone. It's not like the book started in chapter 2. No, the book started in chapter 1. And he wants it's all one complete piece. all moments have existed. You know, it's not like this is the story and the beginning Vonnegut's just shooting the shit with you. I think it's very like, I think it's like that. Your English teacher says it's a waste of time rereading. I don't agree with that. That your English teacher is entitled to their opinion, Rosende fan. But I say don't tie yourself to other people's opinions. If you want to reread a book, reread a freaking book. I say you should reread a lot of books every 3 years or so, because your perspective changes on life. Trust me. Books I read in high school, like I read Catcher in the Rye in high school. I didn't understand it, and I read it again when I graduated college, and I was like, this book's so cool. Sorry, I fell behind in questions again. Sorry. What if Billy is in a coma dealing with his PTSD? We know for sure that he served in the war because the war parts are pretty much true. So what if he was in a coma after the war? See, that's an interesting question, an interesting idea and perspective. But Rita, I would say no. I think I don't think Billy's in a coma after the war. I don't think Billy's real. I think Billy represents parts of Vonnegut. Also in the book, there are parts where Vonnegut refers to himself as one of the people that are in the book, not just the narrator. Like the part where he says, we actually visited where Wild Bob lived in, I think, what was it, Idaho? I'm sorry, I forgot. But that part, he's saying, you know, the story is still continuing. It's not that crazy. It's not weird. Billy isn't in a coma. I think he really is unstuck in time because he's like a fictional character. Oh, Lori Mervin. Did anyone pick up on the names of the characters? Can you expand on that, please? Because that's something I don't think I picked up on. Oh, he keeps saying, my name is Jan Janssen, I work in Wisconsin, I work in a lumber mill there, people on this. I think he says that in the same way that he says kind of so it goes. It's circular. He feels like he's just fitting into like this man doing his job, going to work, and then going home. I think he thinks he's fitting into the routine of life. That's my interpretation right now. Someone just asked me what I think of Mary at first. I love Mary O'Hara as a character. I think he makes her. I think you immediately know who she is and you see her, and I think that's a very. I think her character. Remember the book is dedicated to her and Gerard Mueller, the cab driver. So I think her character and that whole phrase is why Billy Pilgrim is the way he is. Remember, Billy Pilgrim. All of Vonnegut's quotes, why does Vonnegut quote so much? All of Vonnegut's quotes mean something. Remember, Mary O'Hara says, so you're going to make this book a movie, and then people like Frank Sinatra and John Wayne are going to play the characters, and they're all going to think war is great, and you're going to send all of our babies to go do more wars and cause more death. I think Vonnegut literally is taking that, and he made Billy Pilgrim the worst possible soldier in the world. The worst person to be stuck in war and has no will to live. He just knows he's going to survive because that's time, right? He knows, so he doesn't care. He's like, leave me here, and they're like, no. And all of those people pushing him keep him alive, but that's why he made Billy a character that Frank Sinatra or John Wayne can't play. So I think that's important. Yes, the live, okay, everyone curious, the live will be saved. I will post it on the Rosende Reads account, so it'll be there for 24 hours, so you guys can rewatch and we can talk about these ideas. You can kind of tune in and watch it again. Would I like to be unstuck in time? No. I think being unstuck in time removes you from humanity. I think that was one of the biggest things that happened to Billy Pilgrim. He no longer became human when he was able to unstick himself from time. Um, and that's why he worked so tirelessly, I think, to try to get people to see it his way. Because he's like, oh, we could get rid of our human conditions if people just understood time didn't work the way we think it was. So much works like that. So I think that's cool. I have not seen the movie. I've never seen it. I'm gonna watch it when I finish it this time. Lo escribo en español porque me queda más fácil. Creo que utiliza a Billy como alt ego porque así es más fácil hablar de algo de que él ha sufrido demasiado. Yo creo que eso puede ser posible. Él puede estar usando Billy como un alter ego, pero también yo creo que Billy is like, I think he's a specific character so that he can speak through Billy. There's a lot of motives. Like, why do you guys think that Billy's an optometrist? He says it in the book. Ooh, I jumped way behind on the questions. I'm so sorry, guys. Exactly, he becomes like an alien. It's pretty cool. Oh my god. Rainbow_cat, freaking awesome question. I wanted to talk about that. What's the part of him watching movies backwards and the scenes in the past and reverse? What did that mean? I don't know what it meant. But this is the first time I read that and was like, holy, that was so cool. I'm going to read it for you guys so that everyone can be caught up. It's a bit long. Is that okay? It's just an amazing part of the book. So I'm going to read it really quickly for everyone to jump in real quick. And then, so if you can hold your question. Don't read it. Don't read it. Okay. One sec. It's just amazing. I think that's what he's trying. Oh, in that passage, I think he's trying to say how backwards war is. Read it? Okay. I'm getting read it, don't read it. I'm going to read it because I want to read it. Now I can't find it. Billy looked at the clock on the gas stove. He had an hour to kill before the saucer came. He went into the living room, swinging the bottle like a dinner bell, turned on the television. He came slightly unstuck in time, saw the late movie backwards, then forwards again. It was a movie about American bombers in the Second World War, and the gallant men who flew them. Seen backwards by Billy, the story went like this. American planes, full of holes and wounded men and corpses, took off backwards from an airfield in England. Over France, a few German fighter planes flew at them backwards, sucked bullets and shell fragments from some of the planes and crewmen. They did the same for wrecked American bombers on the ground, and those planes flew up backwards to join the formation. The formation flew backwards over a German city that was in flames. The bombers opened their bomb bay doors, exerted a miraculous magnetism which shrunk the fires, gathered them into cylindrical steel containers, and lifted the containers into the bellies of the planes. The containers were stored neatly in racks. The Germans below had miraculous devices of their own, which were long steel tubes. They used them to suck more fragments from the crewmen and planes. But there were still a few wounded Americans, though, and some of the bombers were in bad repair. Over France, though, German fighters came up again, made everything and everybody as good as new. When the bombers got back to their base, the steel cylinders were taken from the racks and shipped back to the United States of America, where factories were operating day and night, dismantling the cylinders, separating the dangerous contents into minerals. Touchingly, it was mainly women who did this work. The minerals were shipped to specialists in remote areas. It was their business to put them in the ground, to hide them cleverly, so they would never hurt anybody again. The American flyers turned in their uniforms and became high school kids. and Hitler turned into a baby. Billy Pilgrim supposed. That wasn't in the movie, but Billy was extrapolating. Everybody turned into a baby, and all humanity, without exception, conspired biologically to produce two perfect people, named Adam and Eve, he supposed. So, to me, I think Vonnegut is being like, look how messed up war is, that when you look at it backwards, it looks like the most beautiful thing in the world. People from all over the world conspiring to make things whole, to fix things, to quell fires, and then to take all those things that caused all that pain and all that death and all that fire, and to put them far away where no one will ever find them and they can never hurt anyone again. I think the main point of that passage was to be like, if you look at war backwards, it makes more sense. I've read 1 through 4 a few times so I can take notes for you guys, so that I can learn new things. I've read these 4 chapters quite a few times over the past week and a half. So yes, I think Billy really was watching the film backwards. I think Billy creates his own perception of time. He's unstuck. He's not like us. We can only watch it forwards. He's like, no, I can watch it backwards. And because of that, he has perspective that other humans don't have. So I think that's really cool. You know what, Rita? That's a great segue. Let's talk about favorite quotes, because this book is chock full of amazing quotes. So, Rita, you said your favorite quote was... Oh, I lost it. When a person dies, he only appears to die. He's still much alive in the past. What do you guys think about that? Whoa, Liz the Finsta. So true. Also going back to Adam and Eve shows how much we've devolved in some ways through war. We'll have a little segue real quick. I've had that same discussion with people that think the world can't change. They think that, oops, sorry guys. They think that the world is how it is and it's going to stay that way. I don't believe that to be true. I think if more people read, I think if more people focus and wake up and care, that the world can change. That's why we're reading. If the accident will, yes, WTHB, I don't know what that means, or what the hell be, I don't know. But yes, if the accident will, I'm going to start saying it. I think I'm going to try to bring it back. It's like a common phrase. Okay, in my opinion, why does Vonnegut quote so much? I think he quotes the same way a lot of people do, to make a point. Ipso facto. I don't know if that's how you say that. I just always wanted to say that. There's a quote that Vonnegut has when he talks about the Children's Crusade. Did anyone notice this? That when Vonnegut and him, in the first chapter, him and Bernard V. O'Hare are talking about the Children's Crusades. I'll read it for you. History, in her solemn page, informs us that the Crusaders were but ignorant and savage men, that their motives were those of bigotry unmitigated, and that their pathway was one of blood and tears. Romance, on the other hand, dilates upon their piety and heroism, and portrays in her most glowing and impassioned hues their virtue and magnanimity, the imperishable honor they acquired for themselves, the great services they rendered to Christianity. Now, that's in the first chapter, talking about the Children's Crusades, and he goes on to say, now, what was the grand result of all these struggles? Europe expended millions of her treasures, and the blood of 2 million of her people, and a handful of quarrelsome knights retained possession of Palestine for about 100 years. He's trying to say, like, was it worth it? Were the Crusades really worth it? It was savage, and there was this unmitigated bigotry, and they did terrible things, but it was in the name of Christianity, so it was cool. And all these knights got to be proud about keeping a piece of land for 100 years. which in the grand scheme of time is not a lot of time at all. Now, he's not commenting on Palestine, he's not commenting on that, he's commenting on the actual act of war there. Kind of being like, really, man? 2 million people and all this stuff so that you guys could have this for 100 years? Worth it? I don't know. But then he also goes back and he talks about it again with, what's his name? Okay, I can't find it right now, but literally, he uses the same thing to describe the American soldiers with Roland Weary when they're about to get captured by the Germans. Like right before the other two guys, literally he uses the same description, and the great services they rendered to Christianity. He's trying to make a tie, saying that he thinks war is pointless. He thinks there's nothing good will come out of war, and there's so many better ways to do it. All right, Zayn Nasheed. I'm sorry if I pronounced your name wrong. I apologize if I did. But I admire Vonnegut's effort to make war seem less admirable, especially given the time he was writing it. That is an awesome thing for you to say, and I'm going to tie that into my discussion. Does anyone know? Can someone tell me what year the book was written in? Yes, 1969. The book was written in 1969, which was the year that Lyndon B. Johnson, he started as president, but then Nixon took over. The Vietnam War was in full effect. Thousands of young men and innocent Vietnamese and Viet Cong were dying. And it was a terrible time for our country. There was a lot of turmoil. People didn't want to be at the war. People didn't understand why we were in war again. Korea had happened in the 50s. World War II had happened just before that. It was a lot of people thought Vietnam was a senseless war. So he was writing this book to be like, why are we doing this again? Why are we sending our babies to go do these terrible things that in the end are not really for anything more than just a pissing contest? I think that was Vonnegut's interpretation of it, because of the fact that because of his experiences. And that's one of the coolest things about, I think, Vonnegut's writing is you don't, especially in American culture, you don't quite often find a soldier who's willing to speak to the atrocities that the American government and the American military have committed, and willing to speak to these things and be like, yo, this was really fucked up. This, like, look, the bombing of Dresden killed 135,000 people. I think more than that. The bombing of Dresden was worse than the atomic bombing of Hiroshima, but people don't know about it. And like the poor people of Sodom and Gomorrah, everyone in the city was determined to be a sinner, whether or not they had any humanity left. And it was just a senseless killing. And I think Vonnegut wants people to be aware of that. And in American books, a lot of the time, war seems great. It seems like it's a step. And he's like, war should never be a step, and it does not prove greatness. And I think that's something he's saying, especially as an American soldier himself. And that's something that perspective is something you don't quite often see. So thank you for bringing up the time in which the book was written and why this book I think is so powerful. Also very interesting to be reading right now. What do you guys think about that? What do you guys think about reading this book right now? Yes, you're right, my Dory Mustache. Your Instagram handle is hilarious. They did. The bombing of Dresden was not declassified for a long time. They kept it hidden from the public. And then even in American schools, I could tell you right now, I didn't learn about the bombing of Dresden until I read this book. Roland Weary liked to say that Billy Pilgrim killed him because Pilgrim was the one that got them caught. If not, they would have been with the other two musketeers, and they would have been off. But then the problem is, Weary didn't recognize that those two musketeers were killed as well. So, I think Weary kind of represents this like singular perspective, and he represents like the people that think like that. I don't know if that's true, but I think he's a very interesting character, and he definitely lends a lot. Personally, I think I would be annoyed by Weary. I think he seems very annoying. I would actually be really annoyed by Billy Pilgrim too, especially if I were the other two soldiers. I would hate him. They're still going to wars. You're right. You're right. Casey Lewis, 2001. Oh, good idea. What do you think about the part when the Tralfamadorian gave him their books for him to read? Was that in the reading we did now? I don't remember that part. Ah! No, that wasn't in the part we read yet. So, whew, you scared me. I was like, I didn't think about that. I didn't have anything. I don't have any notes about that. Bianca Frank 23. What do you think the hobo represents? That's a great question. I've actually never thought of that. But right now, if you're asking me right now, I would say I think he's also saying things could be worse. Think about it. His only lines are always, I've slept worse places. I've been somewhere worse. I've felt worse. I've been hungrier. I think he's trying to say that, like, war is the worst you can get, but still some people have experienced worse. And it exists. It's a spectrum, I think. It all exists. War is glamorized intensely by the media. War is not honorable. War is a crime against humanity. Literature like this is always refreshing. I think it is glamorized by the media for a purpose many times. For a purpose. And remember, Vonnegut was a big pacifist, as you can see. He fought for that. And I think his point of view is very clear in this book. So it goes. Yes, Sarah Barra spams. I think that's super important. I read American Sniper as well. Okay, I'll read her comment for everyone. I like reading American Sniper and this because the views on war are very different, and it makes a comparison to contemplate. Remember, in this world, no one's right and no one's wrong. Everyone just has their perspective. Just like, God, I love that I had these quotes just ready for you guys. Just like when Vonnegut says, I think about my education sometimes. I went to the University of Chicago for a while after the Second World War. I was a student in the Department of Anthropology. At that time, they were teaching that there was absolutely no difference between anybody. They may be teaching that still. Another thing they taught me was that nobody was ridiculous or bad or disgusting. Shortly before my father died, he said to me, you know, he never wrote a story with a villain in it. I told him that was one of the things I learned in college after the war. There's only perspective. There's no right or wrong. And I think that's something that's super important as well. You guys are asking a lot of questions that I don't know if I can answer. He's realistic because he knows it could be worse. You're right. I think everyone should read this book. I agree. Okay, Catherine Jolly. What are my opinions on the use of propaganda? From a perspective of a government or a military entity that wants the most powerful force there is, and that's the power of the people? Absolutely. The use of propaganda is a genius idea. Think about it. The internet can now be used as propaganda. Everyone goes on the internet. I mean, propaganda as an idea to use and turn the minds of the people is a genius idea. Now, propaganda is never good. Well, I mean, there is, but it's always to support an ideal. It's to get the minds of the people Remember, that's one of the goals of not of war, but one of the necessary things in war, and that's why I think Vietnam became so hard for the American people, was because so many people were opposed to it. There was no winning that war in the eyes of the people. The country itself had given up on the military in that sense, and you can't have that. I'm glad everyone's enjoying the book. That makes me so happy that everyone is able to take this book and be like, wow, I've loved it. It's been so cool. Yes, I know that Quakers tend to are very, very much peace oriented, right? I think they're pacifists, if I'm correct. What did Vonnegut mean by the train, how fast it went or how it looked? I think he's just trying to bring you along with the ride. But I think there's an interesting point when Billy's on the train where he talks about time moving so slowly. Like, there was one click and a year went by, and then there was another click and another year. He says that when he's waiting as a non-person after his Lufthansa flight. He says, my watch clicked and a year went by, and then another click. That's to show that humans are so tied to time, and to show that the book is still connected again. So I like that you brought that up, and I love that. That's so cool. You got your English teacher to join the book club. That's so great. I'm glad she's joining. I mean, I bet she's probably read a lot of this, and I bet she has a lot more insights than I do, so that's awesome. I hope if there are any English teachers that are watching or are with us in our book club, please feel free to dive in, give us your insights. We're all here to learn, and we're here to see the book from new perspectives and do some cool stuff. So if there are any cool English teachers on here, thank you for joining. You are inspiring, and please. You're right. I was using propaganda as we speak. Crazy, right? But that's the thing. Propaganda can be a tool. It's a tool. Quite often abused, but it's a tool. That's Aphrodite.dv. That's a great question. Why are humans the only species that have free will according to the Tralfamadorians? I don't know. That's something that I've wanted to think about. Like, why is it only on Earth that they've said they've experienced this idea of free will? I think it's because we're tied to humanity, our humanity, what makes us experience this dimension. And I think we can only experience time linearly. And that's why we believe in this idea that we can change it. But I believe in free will as well. But not in this, I don't know. That's where things get weird, and that's where a whole other discussion has to take place for us. So maybe next time. Maybe at the end of the book we'll talk about it. I think that's a good question to bring back for the end when we finish. Because then we can look at the whole book as one set of Rocky Mountains, right? We're not just stuck in the middle. Did I like Vonnegut's writing? Yes. Yeah, I am very tired. I worked till like 1:30 last night, too. I was shooting. And then I got back, and then I couldn't sleep, so I was up for like an hour, and I'm awake. All right, good question. My favorite quote. I'm gonna look through my whole thing now. Oh wait, I haven't written. Well, I like So It Goes. My friend James Boland, I don't know if you guys know him. If you don't, you should follow him. He's awesome. He says it all the time. Him and I read it together, actually, Slaughterhouse-Five. The first book I ever read by Kurt Vonnegut was Breakfast of Champions, which made me promptly jump into a bunch of other work. Like God Bless You, Mr. Rosewater, and Slaughterhouse-Five. There's a really good quote about art that I like. Okay, there are a few questions here that really get me. One is that, and I asked myself about the present, how wide it was, how deep it was, how much of it was mine to keep. That's up here all the time for me now. I don't know why. It's just kind of like, wait, this has to be mine. I love when he was talking about Erica Ostrovsky's Celine in his vision, and when he said he became a doctor and he treated poor people in the daytime and he wrote grotesque novels at night. No art is possible without a dance with death, he wrote. The truth is death, and I fought nicely against it as long as I could, danced with it, festooned it, waltzed around it, decorated with streamers, titillated it. Time obsessed him. I think that obsession with time is a very human thing. Make them stop. Don't let them move anymore at all. There, make them freeze once and for all so they won't disappear anymore. I think he's referring to just take it in. Because before you know it, it's all going to be gone. And you're not going to have experienced it. I don't know. That's what I think right now. So you can see even in the corner, I was like, what does this mean? What does this mean? Oh, sorry, but this is one of the best quotes in the whole book. And Lot's wife, of course, was told not to look back where all those people and their homes had been. But she did look back. And I love her for that. Because it was so human. She was turned to a pillar of salt. So it goes. Ugh. People aren't supposed to look back. I'm certainly not going to do it anymore. I've finished my war book now. The next one I write is going to be fun. This one is a failure, and it had to be, since it was written by a pillar of salt. Love that. The first line's amazing as well. CK Carrie Karina? Yes, I do read on set in between takes. Top secret from whom? I love that part. I think I want to make this movie again. I haven't seen the first one, but I want to remake it and make it really great. Ooh, wow, I fell way behind on your questions again. I'm so sorry. Every time I scroll down, and I'm like, oh my goodness. I've encouraged everyone I've ever met to read this book. Actually, most of the time when I can't even tell you how many copies of this book I've bought. Every time I'm reading it and someone asks me, hey, what book is that? I always say, you've never read it? Here, keep mine. And then I have another one in my backpack. I've done it so many times. I've given the book to a few people recently, actually. So this is a new one that I had to make a bunch of new notes in, which is kind of cool. He's in a constant stage of stage fright because he never knows what part of his life he's going to have to act in next. Love that quote. I think that's cool. But I feel like that's life, right? You never really know what's going to happen next. It kind of just happens. You're like, oh gosh, now I have to be here. I met this person. Weird. Have I ever considered being a writer? I've never written. I've always wanted to, but I never have. I'm nervous. But I'm going to try. I think this year I'm going to learn. I'm going to try writing myself. We'll see if anything happens. I don't know. I like acting. I'm good at that. I might stick with that. But I think Billy's completely sane. I think Billy is separate. I think he's used as a tool to teach us and to speak through. I think Vonnegut he speaks through Billy, but I think Billy is everything that happened to Billy's real. That's what I think. I think that the Tralfamadorians are definitely meant. I think it's a way for Vonnegut to really make us understand something. United We Stand 0704. Totally agree. Night by Eli Wiesel is amazing. An amazing book. That one's very good. Also, I think the book Milkweed by Jerry Spinelli is very good for Holocaust era books. It's very good. Oh, thank you. I hope I'd be good at that. I want to try. I'm going to try. No, I'm going to do it. I'm not going to try. Do it or not. Is there any character in the book that I relate to? I don't think so. Not yet. What about you? How are you guys feeling? I'm going to ask you questions now. Any characters in the book you relate to? I'm just going to read your answers from now on. So write your answers and I'll be in there. Any characters you relate to, and then also write your favorite quotes and I'll read them out loud for everyone. All right, before we do this, I'm gonna talk about this. How do you give books away? No, you have to. I think giving a good book away is one of the best things you can do to someone. It's like, hey, this is why I see the world this way, and I think it's really cool. You should try to see it this way too. Or it's kind of just being like, yo, I think it's such a truthful form of sharing. But I never lend a book. I'll never say, hey, borrow this book. I'm just going to give it to you. Because if it's a book that's that good and it's on my bookshelf, I'll buy it again. But it's actually a rule of thumb, so everyone remember this. Never lend a book you're not fully prepared to never get back. So yeah, you just when you give a book away, just know you're giving someone an experience that might change the way they see the world. And that's like the coolest thing ever. The wife of the man in the first chapter. You liked Mary O'Hare. That's super cool. Yeah, and you relate to her. Wow, cool. I relate to her too. But I don't feel like she's me. I just feel like I understand her. Yeah. Nike was here. I totally agree. It is kind of expensive. I mean, I didn't own this book for like a bit of time because I'd given it away, and I was like, damn, I can't buy a new one yet. But the good thing is a lot of books have PDFs and stuff, so you can kind of make it work. People aren't supposed to look back. I'm certainly not going to anymore. Straight off the page. Good. Well, that's that straight off the page. That goes to like that quote that one of our drivers, Shauna, who's amazing, she told me. It's like, that's why your windshield is so big and your rearview mirror is so small. Right? You're supposed to look forward, not back. Kate Blair, I absolutely notice more now that I've read the book. And not only that, like the first time I read the first chapter out loud to my mom. Like we were sitting together and I said I would read her the first chapter. So I read her the first chapter and I read that first chapter alone like 17 times. So yeah, every time I read it, something new comes up, a new thing. I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize he referenced this in chapter 5. I didn't realize that in chapter 4 he says the exact same words as he said. It's really cool. He didn't look like a soldier at all. There's a great quote because none of them were born warriors and they were barely men when World War II broke out. They were never meant to be soldiers. You're so right. That was a really powerful quote. I love that. Callisto99, I don't like reading PDF books because I like to like little notes and stuff. And I like holding a book and smelling it. But I have read PDFs and stuff because I needed to read it. And they get the job done. Pinkleberry. That's a great name. Yes, I think I read that one. Love that one too. What do I think about the bugs being trapped in amber? Love that. I think it's so cool. Because I think it's true. We're all trapped in the amber of this moment. We can just enjoy it. Marika Lambertson, right? I love smelling books. Old books, too. New books don't smell... I mean, they smell good, but they don't smell as good as old books. Old books smell like heaven. No, this is my favorite hat. Yes, someone asked me that earlier. This is my favorite hat. Straight off the page, I will be keeping this live up for 24 hours. Everyone watching, I will save it, and I'll make sure it stays up. If for some reason it messes up and it doesn't save, I apologize. But I will save it and post it so that everyone can rewatch and stuff like that. If the film was remade, who would I most likely play as? I don't know. I don't know if I fit anyone. I'd want to play Billy, but I don't know if I fit Billy. It'd be fun to play Billy. All right, we only have 5 more minutes. Dude, we've been on live for an hour. Isn't this awesome? We talked about a book for an hour. Did you guys notice it was an hour? I didn't notice it was an hour. This is epic. So thank you guys for joining. Yes. So let's talk about. We talked about a lot. I'm sorry. I made so many notes. I didn't even look at them. Like I didn't even look at my notes. Jeez. Okay, but oh, I actually talked about this. That's a question for another time. We'll ask next time. We talked about this. We talked about this. Yo, we hit all the points I wanted to talk about. This is awesome. Hell yeah. So one last question, and then we'll talk about next week and the rest. Think about the choice to name him Billy. You know what, Nuza, did Kurt do the same as Chaplin in The Great Dictator? Maybe. Maybe. Like a kid, exactly. See, Amelia Pickles, what do you make confident references to the dog barking in the background? I don't know. I have to read it all again for that to happen. That's interesting. I have to reread that. Exactly, my Dory Mustache. God, your name is so funny. It's awesome. Yes, it's more approachable. There's a whole quote about it. Makes people like him right away, keep him young, and I think us as readers are immediately like, oh, we like Billy. Billy's cool. Exactly. Innocent, like, when you think of a child. And I think that's speaking to the innocence that they have going to war. They were boys then, remember? So let's talk about next week. Woo! So that was the first Instagram Live for our book club. Wow, that's pretty excited. I'm not gonna lie, I'm very happy right now. That was this has been really awesome. Thank you guys for joining, and thank you for reading and asking cool questions and allowing me to like learn more about my favorite book. I did a lot of research. I learned about when it was written. Cool, like stuff I'd never done before. So thank you. So the next live will be next Saturday at the same time. Next Saturday at noon. Oh my gosh. Did you know you can only do an Instagram Live for an hour? There's literally a clock counting down. I didn't know that. Holy crap. Okay. So we have 1 minute and 50 seconds. So the next live will be next week. We are reading... So next week, we are reading To Kill a Mockingbird. We will finish the book by next Saturday, which is September 16th. So finish the book. Read all of it. Enjoy it. Reread it if you want. Reread quotes. And remember, keep making notes of your favorite quotes. Keep making notes of things that impact you, questions you have. Keep exploring. If you want to get an answer and you want to bring it to discussion, Google it. There's so many people that have read this book now, so many people that have done cool analyses of the book and different ideas and perspectives. So like, go check it out. So the next book we'll talk more about next week, but it's To Kill a Mockingbird. You still have time to get that. And then the book we're reading after that, I will announce next week. So you guys know, or should I announce it now? 44 seconds.